Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another Tenkaichi fight discussion. I assume if you're here, you either enjoyed my video on the previous fight, or you're here for the first time because, if we're being really real here, the second fight is way more popular and well-liked than the first one. And that's for a reason, because it's significantly better, in my opinion. You may be noticing there are some differences in this video from the last one, some that you won't have noticed just yet. The first thing is that there's some gameplay footage in the background. I started doing some gaming streams from my PS5 this week, so from here on out what I'll probably be doing is I'll be having gameplay in the background instead of just having like the space image with a filter over it. So there's more movement going on. And I'm not going to have the manga pages up constantly, so it'll mostly be the gameplay footage, and then whenever whatever panel I'm going to bring up comes up in the discussion, that'll be on screen for the time that I'm talking about it. So hopefully that ends up looking good. I would certainly like it to, and I hope it makes for a more enjoyable viewing experience for you guys. So now then, without any further ado, let's get into Kotaro Fuma versus Toda Seigen. So our first fighter is introduced after Musashi takes his leave, presumably to go rest and recover. I'm assuming there's probably going to be some kind of gap between each round of the tournament, because otherwise we're going to get to like the semifinals and everyone's going to be basically dead. And then when we get to the actual finals, it's just going to be two comatose people being thrown in a ring with each other. So the first of the two fighters that we are introduced to for this round is Toda Seigen, who's here with his nephew Shigemasa. And the fun thing about Toda is he's blind, which he says like right out the gate. It's almost kind of... You could say it's almost sort of unnatural. It's like an info dump when someone explains something in such a way that they wouldn't reasonably do if it was real life or whatever. Where, like, of course, Toda's nephew would know that he's blind. He doesn't need to say that to him. But, you know, it's for letting us know, yeah, Toda's blind. This is the blind swordsman for Tenkaichi, which is always a very cool trope. And naturally, one of Oda's retainers has no faith in Toda. He says that bringing a blind, senile old man to fight in front of Nobunaga is irreverent. It's disrespectful. And he says that even I could probably get a hit on this guy. So, naturally, Toda doesn't like that. He tells him to shut up. And when the retainer starts getting all pissy at him, he cuts his hand off without him even having seen him do it. And then he cuts his nose off without us seeing him cut. So, he's doing the anime thing where he's moving so fast that you can't even see him cutting. And he gets all up in this dude's face as he's holding on to where his nose was cut off, trying to stop the fucking ridiculous amount of blood flow that comes from having your goddamn nose cut off. And he's telling him, I can't hear well. You're a samurai, you should speak more clearly. This is why I hate Oda's retainers, They're all so unclear, they just murmur shit under their breaths. Do you understand me? And he's kind of like... He's like forcing his eye open, and we can see that he is indeed blind. He can't see shit, so you gotta speak up, man. I need to hear you. So when he walks in, he's getting introduced. The femboy is hyping him up. He's walking out with his sponsor and his nephew. Everyone's like, is this like for real? This old dude is gonna fight in the tournament? And he's like, yeah, I can hear all that. Hey, Shige, why don't you show them what I can do? So his nephew throws the decapitated head of the retainer, which is then censored, so I'm assuming that Toda mutilated it in some way after that, like other than just cutting his fucking nose off. And I just love that his nephew just does this without a second thought, no change in his expression or anything. He's just totally on board with it. Like, is it just normal for Toda to go around decapitating and mutilating people's retainers? So he's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm on board. I'm on Team Toda. I gotta respect it, can't lie. Now, our second fighter for this round is introduced first off as the fifth Kotaro Fuma, or Fuma Kotaro, however, whatever order you're supposed to say that in, actually. They're the Fuma clan, so I guess Kotaro is the first name. This is Fuma Kotaro the fifth. So they are the Fuma clan, and the name Kotaro is more of an inherited title. I guess the leader of the clan becomes Kotaro. And of course, hold on a second, this isn't the giant muscle woman I saw on the volume cover, or previously in the actual series, or in all the fan art I've been seeing on Twitter and other places. So then, the sixth Kotaro enters, jumping off of the roof and landing on the fifth Kotaro, sitting on his back, chilling out, smoking a pipe, doing some pretty goddamn mean manspreading. So apparently Kotaro the Sixth is referred to as the Fuma Empress. I guess she is the first female Kotaro. I'm not complaining. It's recency bias, it's lack of exposure to other media, but I would argue that Fuma, I should really call her Kotaro, but Fuma sounds more feminine, doesn't it? Maybe the hottest anime woman, even though she's not in an anime yet. I don't know, the hottest manga woman? Like, it feels like when the artists were doing the character design for her, and there's actually sketches from when they were designing her character, the various stages of her design, they were, like, trying to include every single feature of a female anime character that weebs fall absolutely head over heels for. Yeah, let's see here. Tall, big boobs, very muscular, very defined legs, clearly extremely dominant. Also, the coat she's wearing is very cool. I mean, come on. She is literally the complete package. They have given us everything we could conceivably want. It's kind of fucking amazing. Now, of course, it must be of note that in real life, Fuma Kotaro was a guy. And I don't think his name Kotaro was inherited by other people. Like, he was just... Kotaro Fuma was a dude. So, this is one of the biggest examples of, creative license or whatever, where they decided, yeah, fuck it. Let's make Kotaro a woman. And an extremely hot one at that. I'm not complaining, of course, because I have eyes. So that's just interesting. That also opens up the possibility of having other female characters. I mean, the only other one it really could be is Kojiro, because Kojiro is masked. So everyone else we can pretty clearly see as a guy. Unless there's one other one who's a woman. There was that one person whose name I can't remember. They were sort of towards the bottom of the spread where they introduced the fighters. And I thought they looked maybe kind of feminine, maybe a little androgynous. I don't know. And another thing, having a female fighter in your battle manga tournament is pretty unique because not really any of the major ones that are popular or good have female fighters in a tournament where there are male fighters. I know Majo Taisen is all female fighters, but there are no male fighters then, and also I've heard it's really not that great. But, Kengan doesn't have any female fighters in the Kengan matches. Ragnarok doesn't have any female fighters. This is something that distinguishes Tenkaichi from all those other series, which are older and far more established in a way that's pretty good. I feel like they made a pretty goddamn good selection for their female representation character. Now, Fuma is tossed the Fuma Shuriken by the fifth, which is that even technically a shuriken? I mean, it's a giant, throwing knife or whatever. I mean a giant one. It's, the size of her fucking head. So it's like a giant block of steel attached to a chain, and she catches it very casually. Now, there's a pretty funny little dynamic between the two of them here, in which Kotaro is like, really, this is the guy they're sending me to fight against? He's kind of skinny. I'd like someone with a little more meat on him. And Toda is like, what the fuck are you saying? What are you calling me, bitch? So there's already a pretty funny dynamic being set up between these two. I would say, like, already at the start, better and more entertaining dynamic than we had between Musashi and Tadakatsu. And the fucking... The icing on the cake is that the fifth barks like a dog. That's the last thing. Like, oh, fucking Christ, man. Good lord. So these are our fighters for round 2, or I guess match 2. Anyway, did you notice that I'm using a lot of colored pages and panels? That's because I got my guy Euler to color some of the pages for this video. He was going to do some for the last video, but he ended up getting COVID, so obviously he was sick. But he's better now, and he's doing some of the colorings for this video. So, you know, I'll have his Twitter link down in the description. If you want to go check that out, support him. I think some of these colorings are, to be entirely honest with you right now, some of the best that he's ever done. Yeah, be sure to go check that out. But anyway, it's time for match 2, Fuma Kotaro versus Toda Seigen, to begin. Now, unlike the last match, which just kind of took place in Nobunaga's yard or something, this match is going to be taking place on this little tiny island with a forest on it called the Forest of Blood, because Nobunaga decided that just having people fight in his backyard was kind of boring, so they threw a comically large dice to decide where the next round would take place, and they decided on the forest. So that's pretty cool. Now, the match begins, and Fuma starts off by doing like a pitcher's throw and lifting her leg really high up into the air. The artist knew exactly what they were doing with a lot of Fuma's panels, and they do it very, very well. So, Fuma throws a shuriken, and this attack is called the Falcon Bullet, which Seigen just seems to dodge out of the way of. Like, he's kind of sidesteps a little bit. He didn't do, like, any really big extreme movements, just kind of, like, pushed himself out of the way with his foot. So then Fuma tries to flash step behind him and go for a punch. Now, the very interesting thing about Fuma's fighting style is she is supposed to be a ninja, basically, but she's like a fucking giant and really goddamn muscular, and she's more of a brawler. She's very over the top when it comes to her attacks and such, so she's not a stealthy ninja in the slightest. It's like Uzui. It's cool. I like it. Her personality is tremendous. The psychotic, sadistic grin she has on her face while trying to punch Toda in the back of the head is just wonderful. I mean, she has so much range with some of the panels that she's gotten already. She can be sexy, she can be cute, she can be intimidating. Really, they just... Listen, I'm simping big time for Fuma. There's no secret about that. We literally made a Fuma Shrine channel on the Discord, so if you're interested in that, you can join the Discord and check that out. But Toda spins around and slashes at Fuma, which, you know, kind of nicks her on the side a little bit. Cuts off her big, cool Japanese rope belt that I have no idea what it's called. And this leads to her jacket falling off, which I'm a little sad about because I actually think she looks even cooler with the jacket on. I really like the jacket, but I'm not going to complain because that just means she's now even more revealing than she already was. We got hip windows and shit. I'm not gonna complain about that. So, Fuma's wondering, how could you tell I was moving if you're blind? But, like, come on, we all know here. And Toda says, hey, I told you that I wasn't going to be boring, right? And of course, it's of note that Fuma talks about herself in third person. She calls herself Kotaro. And Toda starts playing along and just starts calling himself Seigen, which I really like. I like that he's just like, whatever, just goes along with the flow of everything. It's pretty neat. So we get the explanation of Seigen's ability, and his power is called the White Knight's Eye, and this is introduced with a double-page spread of him having all of these giant eyeballs behind him with all of the muscle attached to them. This is actually one of the nicest spreads I have seen, maybe ever. It's a fucking amazing spread. Once again, the artist for this series is really goddamn good. They are a very, very talented artist. I would say that they're better than the Ragnarok artist. And, Record of Ragnarok has pretty amazing art already. So, the fact that the Tenkaichi artist has even better art than that is just fucking ridiculous. God damn, my cat's trying to break into my fucking room. That scared the shit out of me. Oh my god. They want their dinner already. I already gave them half, but they want more. They're ravenous little beasts. So, of course, like any blind character, Toda's able to see more than people who can see through his other senses, such as hearing. Hearing's the big one, because it's kind of the easiest way to distinguish where someone is in relation to you. Other than seeing things, you can usually hear where things are coming from. The other senses make that a little difficult. Now, Fuma starts getting really into it, and she gets into this very uncomfortable, unnatural-looking position where she's kind of like knelt over and also turning around in the opposite direction to look at Toda while she's spinning around the shuriken. And as the characters point out, that's like really flexible. And once again, looks very unnatural and uncomfortable. Her leg is bending in a very strange way there. So she builds up the power in her shuriken as much as she can, and then unleashes this attack, which is called the Tiger Bullet. And this one gets an entire page dedicated to showing off the speed and power of it. This fight has really good choreography. Have I mentioned that? It's really good, and I think this fight does an even better job showing off how good the artist is at portraying speed and power. So, Toda's not really impressed because the forest is full of obstacles. So, the trees are perfectly sufficient for blocking attacks with the shuriken. But she seems to maybe intentionally attack the tree that Toda is hiding behind for the purpose of creating like a smoke screen, because now there's a bunch of noise and debris that was being blown towards Toda, so it would be harder for him to detect what's going on. So she rushes in, down low, get a great ass shot, and Toda's just waiting for her to get there. He's totally expecting her. He can hear her coming, and he's already unsheathing his sword, saying, come on, come like half a step closer, I'm going to end this right here. But instead of coming any closer to attack Toda, she sticks her hands out and claps them together to make an extremely loud clap. One so loud that it bursts Toda's eardrums. So, one chapter into the fight, and Toda's already lost his hearing. He's now blind and deaf. Kinda seems like it may already be over, because that's an extremely debilitating injury. How is he supposed to fight or really do anything if he can't even hear Fuma? So we get this nice panel of Fuma's face, which is all shaded out, so she's looking like a demon or something. And we see that the power of her clap actually, ripped off some of her fingernails, which is disgusting and very painful to look at. And now, as you would imagine, Toda's kind of disoriented because he's deaf now. He can't hear anything. So now his ability to detect where Fuma is not great. I mean, I assume he would be able to tell where she is when she kicks him in the fucking stomach and sends him flying. I mean, this is like a 70-something little old man being kicked by a gigantic muscular woman who's, maybe in like her 30s at most? Yeah, so this is getting pretty goddamn one-sided right now. So she takes out a hidden knife, says that she's probably broken some of his ribs, but he's pretty tough for an old man, because, he didn't just die from that or get ripped in half. So she does a big stomp, does this overhand throw of the knife. Great panel here showing off all the assets and that crazy face once again. And then we get this panel of Toda, where he's lifting his head up, he's opening his eyes, and there's sort of these, light streams coming off of his eyes, and he's thinking Zen. And Yagyu, who's watching this, is very surprised, because Toda then manages to deflect the knife, somehow, even though he can't see or hear it coming, and everyone's shocked by this. Fuma's like, how the hell did you do that? So Toda is like, damn, got a little flustered there for a second. Overreacted a little bit to losing one of my senses. But then Fuma's like, whatever, I'll just do more attacks. So she pulls out more knives and starts chucking them at Toda. And he's like, yeah, no worry. There's nothing the White Knight's eye can't see. So even if I can't see or hear, the White Knight's eye can still tell what's going on. What's the deal with that? So he says, yeah, thank you, Zenzaimon. And we get this amazing, oh my god, this fucking panel where Toda says Zenzaimon, or as the translator's note says, Zenzaimon would be a more accurate pronunciation, but it was harder to fit that into the speech bubble in a way that looked good. And also, Zenzaimon sounds way cooler to say than Zenzaimon, especially if, when this gets animated and we have some old Japanese man with a very gravelly voice saying Zenzaimon in like a very badass tone. Yeah, that may be peak. I think this needs to get animated just so that I can hear that. I just need to hear that. That'll do it for me. So then we get into, oh my god, an in-depth flashback about Toda Seigen. So Tenkaichi seems to be another example, like with the Record of Ragnarok, where in the first round, the characters are somewhat more surface level, and then in the second round, at least one of the characters is a lot more in-depth. And I would say that arguably, even though I love Fuma, Toda is arguably the better character out of the two. So we see Toda 20 years ago, 56 years old, which means that in the present he's 76. And we meet his grandson, Zenzaimon, Seki Zenzaimon. And we find out that he's already losing his eyesight at this point. And Zenzaimon is this chippy, up-and-coming kid who's very nice. Toda clearly cares about him a lot. This kid, as you can tell, is basically the light of his life. It's the best thing in his life. So naturally, a few months later, the place that they're living in gets attacked by Oda Nobunaga's forces, and in the battle, Zenzaimon is killed. So it's already, it's pretty clear why Toda doesn't like Nobunaga that much, and he is absolutely distraught by the death of his grandson, and the page where he's, bawling in the rain is really good. This author's really good at displaying emotion through some exaggerated facial expressions. I mean, I don't think any normal person can open their mouth this wide, but, it's like a... How do I say this without spoiling? Luffy in Marineford. You One Piece fans know what I'm talking about. That panel looks kind of ridiculous, but, that's just One Piece expressions for you. So the artist kind of does that here. So Toda loses his grandson and then doesn't let anyone else near him. And sitting alone in the dark, eventually he loses his eyesight. So he loses his grandson, and then he loses his ability to see anything. He is shrouded in darkness. So then he goes and secludes himself in the mountains. And then a few months later, his nephew, Shigemasa, comes to look for him. And he finds the guy, dancing around, smiling and laughing, swinging his sword around, with as much vigor as if he'd been brought back to life. And Shigemasa could sense there was some strange presence there, as if Toda was actually having a match with someone, even though there was no one there. So then a few years later, we see Toda again. He's looking more like he does now in the present, and he was even stronger than when he was able to see. So, typical thing, lose my eyesight, now my other senses become stronger. I'm even better than when I had to rely on my eyes. Don't trust your eyes, they can deceive you. So, his nephew remarks on how well he's able to fight, and Toda says, oh yeah, it's Zen. He keeps blabbering on to me about how I'm the strongest in the world, or I gotta be the strongest in the world, and his nephew's like, Zen's been dead for a while now. So Toda's like, what do you mean? He's right here. He's gotten so much bigger, hasn't he? And that's when the realization starts to dawn both upon Shige and us, the readers, that, Toda's, especially with this panel of him all shaded out with just his eyes being white. Yeah, more things have come out of the dark around me. And it seems like, no, Toda wasn't training by himself in the mountains. There really was something there training with him. As we see Toda turn around, he's opened his eyes, and they're like partially bloodshot. And there's this freaky fucking silhouette behind him, which is apparently Zenzaimon, who Toda says shows him everything. As we get this pretty cool panel of Toda standing there with this freaky silhouette ghost looming behind him with these big billowing sleeves and these freakishly long arms that are like holding onto his shoulders and then smiling and pointing in front of him to let him know where his opponent is. So, the blind swordsman thing is a classic trope, and blind swordsmen not even needing their hearing, it's more so all of their senses allowing them to fight, is a really classic and cliche trope. That's nothing new. However, having a blind swordsman be able to see because the, presumably, schizophrenic hallucinations of his dead grandson are telling him what to do is a new thing. I think that's relatively unique. Ah, yes, my dead grandson's stand is telling me where to attack things. Yeah, that's new. And then Yagi points out, no, it's not actually a ghost. He's just detecting everything. He's more so using his sense of touch to feel everything around him rather than relying on his sight and his eyes. That is the true form of the White Knight's eye. So Fuma's like, alright, yeah, cool. This is really difficult. Can't really get in close. The shurikens aren't going to hit you. So she pulls something out of her top, naturally from between her boobs, of course. And she said that she hadn't planned on using this here, and this seems to really freak out the fifth Kotaro. And even Zenzaimon is growling and freaked out by whatever Fuma's going to use. And I guess Toda's able to smell it. And she says that this is the forbidden power that makes Kotaro the strongest Kotaro of them all, with a very nice full page dedicated to this panel of her looking very confident and intimidating and licking her lips. Really, once again, what's not to love about Fuma? So, when removed from its canister, the syringe that Fuma has is called Miyabi Orochi number 6. She injects this into her neck, we see it affecting her bloodstream, and then her eyes get all bloodshot and she starts weeping blood as like all of her veins are protruding and she's getting all fucked up by injecting this thing into herself. We see she's like super out of it, she collapses onto the ground, she's fucking drooling. So, she's really getting hit with whatever this Orochi drug is. And all of the very experienced veteran fighters have an alarm bell go off in their head, a violent alarm bell, because they've detected that Toda is fighting something clearly very dangerous, as we get the most fucked up hype demon I have ever seen in my goddamn life. I guess this is some kind of human centipede, but like, I don't even know, man. I don't know what the fuck this thing is, but it's wrong. This thing should not exist. This is an ungodly creation. So, Fuma gets up. She's literally steaming. And then she fucking flash steps. She's moving way faster than she was already. She goes for a head-on charge, seemingly, but then Zen's like, no, and points down. She's actually coming from below, as she had like charged towards him for like a tackle, but then she like crouched down and then flipped over to do like a a downward axe kick, which is really, it flows really, really well between the panels. Once again, choreography in Tenkaichi, so good. Better than Ragnarok's, honestly, for the most part. Just fucking outstanding. She keeps getting faster and faster. So fast that Toda's not really able to defend himself properly. He tries to block her hitting him, like with her wrist, doing like a backhand. And she may have like cracked his bone. She sends him flying. And then the fifth Kotaro speaks. Finally, apparently the guy doesn't just bark like a dog to say, that's not a drug, it's a poison, a deadly poison that's certain to kill. So then we get a little concerned here, of course, because we don't really want Fuma to die. Even if we want Toda to win, Fuma's great. We don't want her to perish, at least not yet. So the fact that she's apparently injected herself with a fatal poison is really not good. And then we see she starts laughing, like fucking belly laughing like an insane person while weeping blood. And it becomes very clear that she is like tripping balls on this Orochi stuff right now. Like, she is super high on this shit. So then she says, tell me, Gramps, how would you like me to kill you? While she's like flipping her hair around, like looking up in the air, showing off the goods. And like she's sticking out her tongue, she's grabbing her tongue in like this really weird way, poking herself in the head. Like, she is I don't know how to describe what she's feeling right now in a way that's not a little too much, but she's feeling very ecstatic? I don't know. So this is where we get into Fuma's backstory from the Fuma village. So I guess I should call her Kotaro. I don't know. And we see that back in the day, she had this friend of hers named Ao, who, according to what the fifth Kotaro believed, was like her friend or something, or her girlfriend or whatever. I don't know. Fuma seems like the type of person to fuck anything, really. And turns out Kotaro's original name was Kurenai. So Kurenai promised Ao that they would join the Moon team together, which I assume is, it's the best ninja team in the village. And they're currently going through their tests to try and become a fully fledged ninja. And here we meet the master of the village, who looks like fucking Ryuk from Death Note. The guy does not look like a human being. And the dude's pissed because Kurenai keeps trying to drag Ao along with her, even though she's very clearly not fit to be a ninja. So he tells them they're going to be part of the Dirt Team, which freaks both of them out. And he tells her, Nana, you have way too much sympathy to be one of us. You're a failure. Because even if you're really strong and talented, as long as you have sympathy for failures, you're a failure as well. So they both get put in the Dirt Team, which is the team used for testing drugs. And these people are treated like dogs. They are not considered humans. They're not allowed to speak. And as it would turn out, the master of the village is the fifth Kotaro, which is really not that surprising. So after some time, Kurenai and Ao are the only two left. Somehow, even though Ao is apparently weak, I don't know. They have some kind of high tolerance to poison. Now, Kotaro pulls out the Orochi drug, the poison, and he says, hey, I've got one of these left. This is a limiter removal. So it's literally removal from Kengan, but in poison form. That's cool, I guess. And at this point, it's called Miyabi Orochi number 5. I'm assuming because the version that Fuma's using in the present is probably a later variation of it, an improvement of it, whatever you want to call it. So Kurenai says, use it on me. Ao can't take any more of this. And Ao then says, just use it on me. Kurenai shouldn't be somewhere like here. She shouldn't be here with me. Everyone has their role to play, and you shouldn't be treated like garbage like I am because you're actually useful. And then we find out that Kotaro actually lied about only having one dosage of the drug left, so he just gives it to both of them because they're both failures who can't abandon their sympathy. So they both get injected with it, and Ao pretty much fucking explodes. I don't know, all of her blood vessels burst or something. Her body just literally can't handle it. Whereas Kurenai is actually tolerating it to some extent, and she actually, in a rage, breaks free from her bindings and screams, "Don't you fucking dare kill Kurenai's dog," as she punches Kotaro in the face so hard that she knocks out his left eyeball. Then she kicks the testing guy's jaw off and then literally rips apart the other testing guys here. So this is where we find out that no, actually, Kurenai did not view Ao as her friend or sister or girlfriend, whatever. She viewed her as her dog, as her pet, as this lesser thing that she felt this kind of obsession with, this affection for, that people feel for actual dogs. I imagine you would punch someone's eyeball out and then tear apart a group of people with your bare hands if they murdered your dog. So this is actually relatively understandable. And this is the point at which the fifth Kotaro realized that he had given birth to a monster. He had given power to someone who should not have it. And now because of that, the sixth Kotaro has obtained godlike power, as we get this really studly panel of her standing there, arms outstretched with the face of this human centipede demon thing in the background. And she says, "The battle's over, now it's playtime," which is a very interesting play on the usual way that goes, in which they're like, playtime's over, it's time for me to start fighting for real. No, it was a battle before. Now that I'm all hopped up on my shit, it's playtime. It's not a fight anymore. Now it's time for me to have my fun with you. Me personally, I wouldn't mind having some fun with Fuma. Now, of course, as I already mentioned, Fuma's totally tripping balls on this Orochi stuff. She sees the sky is falling, her body reaches everywhere. She imagines herself as this giant godlike being. And now Toda is looking smaller for some reason, but also Zenzaimon is looking even more fucked up and demonic than before. So Fuma stops tripping out in her euphoric state or whatever, speed blitzes, flash steps, tries to attack Toda by going around him, bouncing off the trees, going to his left. But then, turns out that she actually went from behind him, and she punches off his ear as he just barely dodges out of the way. Do you know how fucking hard you have to try and punch someone to rip their goddamn ear off with, blunt force? That's pretty fucking insane right there. Of course, he doesn't really need the ear anymore. Then she follows up going for a kick, which he just kind of dodges out of the way of, tears through his kimono. And this is the point at which everyone's acknowledging her already heightened physical abilities are now completely beyond human. She's become, some kind of demigoddess. It's nuts. Now she's become the strongest beast on the face of the earth, which with a really nice spread, by the way. I really like this spread. Now, Toda attempts to block this attack with his sword. He kind of does, but the impact of it still, cracks his bone. Which is pretty nuts. And Fuma has to give him some praise. He is a very skilled swordsman. Apparently, they're very good at taking hits, too. Which I guess she didn't know. And of course, Toda can't hear what she's saying because he's deaf now. And Fuma apologizes because she forgot that she blew his eardrums out. Now, as Toda's feeling around in the grass, he notices something. And, chuckles and said, "If this is all your trump card's worth, I can beat it no problem." And then, as Fuma's charging at him again, Toda picks up what he found in the grass and wraps the Fuma shuriken around Fuma's wrist. So that's what he found, that's what he used. So now they're stuck in a chain death match, and my god, did I get excited when I got to this for the first time. You want to know how to hype me up? It's a fucking chain death match. Two people trying to murder each other are literally tied to each other. They are literally stuck together. That is one hell of a way to get me very excited for whatever over-the-top brutality is about to happen. Now, Fuma, of course, pulls the classic, "You're not or, I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me. And she says, you think you've chained Kotaro? Wrong! Kotaro's chained you! As she grabs onto the chain, which is wrapped around her wrist, and of course now wrapped around Toda's wrist, and she fucking swings him around. And it seems like he's gonna get smashed into this tree, but instead he lands on it. And Fuma follows up to try and land another attack on him while he's, trying to get his bearings, just landed on the tree. But Zen gets even more fucked up and demonic. Like, he doesn't even have, like, a defined human shape anymore. There's just a mouth behind him with these shadows coming off of it. The entire background is filled with eyeballs as Toda is grinning like a demon. He dodges the punch and slashes at Fuma in an attack called Blade of the Golden Bird King. I don't know how the fuck they're thinking of these names. Like, White Knight's Eye was really cool. I guess you could kind of think of how to name that, but Blade of the Golden Bird King. I don't even know what that's based on. It feels like they just kind of make shit up to sound really cool, and I'm not complaining because, yes, indeed, it is really cool. Now, Fuma's cut open here, which is one of the less grievous wounds that, the fighters have gotten. I mean, like, Musashi lost part of his ribs, which is, pretty severe. But so far, she's just kind of been getting slashes. However, her blood is not congealing. It's not solidifying to stop the bleeding. So if she gets cut open really bad, she's just going to bleed out. It's like the issue with the advance. So the White Knight's Eye had expanded to cover the entire forest as a counter against Fuma's long-range attacks. But now that they're chained together, he's focusing only on her, so he's detecting everything, like to stupid degrees. And I mean absolutely fucking stupid degrees. He can hear her breathing, the rustling of her clothes, which, how much would they rustle? They're like skin tight. He can hear the creaking of her bones and muscles, and the firing of her brain's synapses. What the fuck? How? How do you feel that? What the fuck? Like, White Knight's Eye, Thorns of the Web of Heaven is fucking ridiculous. It is like beyond suspension of disbelief in how fucking accurate that it is. With just his sense of touch, he's able to detect that? Really? Listen, man. I mean, this series I didn't expect to be realistic in the slightest, and it's really not already, so I'm not complaining. That's just me going, yeah, this is giving me some of the Toriko hype. Like, this is stupid shit. And Toriko hype is stupid as shit. So I absolutely love this stuff. This is absolutely tremendous. I love it. And the translators make a joke about this looking like a domain expansion, which, I appreciate. So now the time's coming for the final exchange. They've both acknowledged they've got to move faster than each other if they're going to win. So now we move into the final chapter of the fight. So now, these two inhuman monsters are chained to one another and can dig their claws into one another's hearts as we get this amazing, and I mean amazing, double-page spread of these two just absolutely going at it, attacking each other, trying to block and dodge each other's attacks. This is a fucking amazing spread. I cannot fathom trying to draw something like this. Maybe if you took out the really detailed shadings for Toda's clothes or Fuma's muscles, it would, I guess, be a bit easier. But, like, this is fucking ridiculous. This artist is so fucking good. It's just amazing. Now, everyone's trying to analyze this fight and decide who will win. And Yagyu comes to the conclusion that, yeah, Toda is one step ahead of Fuma. However, even though he can't reach her. He can't land any kind of fatal or match-deciding blow against her. Seigen's body, Toda's body, is old and it's beat to hell. His limits are not that high up. Whereas Fuma has seemingly infinite stamina, meaning that in a battle like this, where yes, Toda is more skilled, but can't manage to land a decisive blow against Fuma, he's going to get worn down first, and he's going to lose. As Fuma punches him in the shoulder, the left shoulder, so, the arm attached by the chain, and gives him an open fracture, like his bone is sticking out of his shoulder. And it's at this point where you're kind of thinking, shit, the guy's already been deafened, like his eardrums have been blown out, now he's got a fucking open fracture. Can a guy with these kind of wounds really go on to, like, the next round of the fight? Like, the difference in damage is so extreme. Is it possible for Toda to bridge that gap at this point? And then Fuma pulls on the chain, so now she's yanking on his arm that has a broken collarbone, and it's fucked up. It's rough as fuck, and she starts dragging him around. She goes in to punch him midair as she's screaming at him, all hyped up, going, come on, is that all? Are you done already? And then we get an internal monologue from Toda, which is really good, in which he thinks about that all his life, he's only ever had things taken from him. He was given a weaker body than other samurai, so he had to learn how to use the kodachi instead of the traditional tachi, the longsword. And then the gods took away his eyesight, and then they took away his grandson, who could have been another person like him. So he wouldn't really be this lonesome black sheep within the clan. And now the gods have come to take his life. And then he chuckles that this is getting fun as he's grinning like a fucking demon, looking like an absolute madman, and says, go ahead, make my fucking day. With my kodachi, I'll take back what was stolen from me and more. As he goes in for a fucking cross counter with a sword. I have never seen someone go for a fucking cross counter with a sword. He's trying to stab Fuma through the head. So what does she do? She takes the sword attack through her wrist and into her shoulder. So she kind of blocks it. And she lands the punch on Toda. She punches him in the face. And that looks like an explosive punch right there. That looks like it did a fuck ton of damage. So now, the sword that Toda's been using for most of the fight, of course he carries two on him like most samurai do, is now like lodged into her arm and shoulder, so it's kind of like pinned there. And Fuma's surprised that he can still go, but then she's surprised when she looks at him and he sees him get back up, unsheath his other sword, as she's basically blown off his left cheek with her punch. And she's laughing. She's so excited. She's like, what the hell's gotten into you? As Toda is begging Zen to give him more power. I've given it everything to make it stronger, even your tragic death. And Zen just becomes even more distorted and demonic. At this point, he's becoming fucking eldritch, as now even the eyeballs in the background are becoming distorted, and we've got the breath coming out of Toda's ripped off cheek like smoke or fire. As he's thinking, I'll win, I've gotta win, if I don't, my whole life will be worthless, which seems to be what both of them are thinking here. As they're going in for this one last exchange, Fuma falls over. She trips back because she's lost too much blood. So the next clash is going to be the last, as Toda's coming in for a stab, screaming, blood spewing out of his mouth, got motion lines coming off of his eyes as he's charging in for this last attack. Looks like Fuma's coming in, doing the same, going for a hand spear. So it looks like either Toda's going to miss and Fuma is going to pierce him, or Toda is going to cut Fuma's hand off. And then Zen speaks to Toda, and Toda is now in good health. He has his eyesight, his ears aren't damaged, and he's in this field of flowers that I forget the name of, but they represent death, I think. They're the flowers that they have in the transition to the afterlife, right? And at this point, I'm like, oh, he's dead. Oh, he lost. He died. Like, he's literally seeing into the afterlife right now. This is what happens when you have a near-death experience or you're dying. You start seeing whatever you think the other side is like. You see your dead loved ones. He's able to see Zenzaimon as a kid. He's not seeing this demonic ghost that he'd seen before standing in the field. And Zen says, "That's enough. I promised before that I'd guide you, so now I'm going to guide you into the afterlife." And Toda looking very nice. Looking like a very nice old man now that he's got the light back in his eyes. He turns around and he sees this blood-stained battlefield. And then he's a silhouette, seeing just the fierce-looking eyes, looking all demonic again. And instead of going along with Zen, he turns around and he walks into the battlefield, even though Zen tells him not to go that way. And Toda's like, "Nope, I'm going there." And as he walks in further, he loses his eyesight again. He starts to regain the injuries that he'd gotten in his fight. And he says, "I didn't think I'd ever get to see the real you again. Thanks for letting me see your face. But you see, Zen, I don't care if you're in heaven or wherever. Where I'm going, the Asura realm, this'll do me just fine." As we get this amazing, oh my god, amazing panel of Toda. This looks like it was painted, like with a brush, instead of being drawn with a pen or something. Where he looks like an actual demon then. He has now become the demon, like his vision of Zenzaimon. So, this may be the first time I've ever seen a character who tragically loses their loved one, approaches death, sees their loved one again, and instead of tearfully embracing them or whatever, he turns around, walks away, and says, "Sorry, grandson. Heaven's not for me. Hell is just way too fucking cool." I have never seen some shit like that before, my friends. As we then go back to the real world and see that Fuma ducked under Toda's attack, punched through his chest, and ripped his fucking heart out. So anyway, here's how Toda can still win. As he grabs onto Fuma's arm and tries to go for one last attack, which it's a completely pointless attack. He's already fucked. He's gonna die. His heart has been ripped out of his body. So this is just him desperately, vainly fighting on for no reason. He is a monster consumed by battle and bloodshed till the very end, as Fuma has trouble moving her arm that got stabbed through, because obviously it got stabbed through. He lands the attack, downward slash, into her shoulder, but he can't really get it down that far. He's screaming, Fuma's screaming, and then Fuma finally manages to move her arm. She grabs him by the wrist. And this is a detail I didn't notice until recently. There are these kanjis on the panels here that aren't translated, but what I'm assuming they are is Toda's heart. As we see Fuma grabs him by the wrist, she pushes his hand away so, his sword's coming out of her shoulder. As there are fewer and fewer of the kanji, Toda's shaking. And then finally, one last kanji. They fade away. The sword drops out of Toda's hand. He's dead. Fuma wins the fight. So first off, let me just say I'm very happy that Fuma won. I'm glad Fuma didn't die. We're rooting for Fuma from day one. She was the reason I originally started reading the series. Because, obviously, she's the most popular thing from it. If you haven't read Tenkaichi or even heard the name of the series before, you've probably seen the giant red-haired woman with inner side boob that's really muscular and's got the face tattoos and everything and looks really goddamn hot. Probably seen her somewhere by now. So, obviously she was my first real introduction to the series. I'm pretty sure there were some people that had recommended it to me in the comments before, like once or twice. But the title was so fucking long, and there hadn't really been that many chapters out. And the initial premise of it didn't seem that interesting to me. It seemed like it was basically just another Record of Ragnarok, and we've had quite a few of those recently. So I was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Maybe I'll check it out eventually. But then Fuma happened, and then various people in my Discord were like, damn, Tenkaichi's really fucking good. So then I finally got around to reading it for Fuma, and I read the first fight, and I'm like, damn, that was really goddamn good. Ooh boy, the muscle woman is here. The muscle goddess has arrived. Thank fuck. And then we had this fight, which was absolutely fucking amazing. Like, absolutely outstanding. Toda, he once again is arguably the best character out of the two here. Probably the best character we've gotten so far. He's quite tragic in a certain way. He really lost everything and then just succumbed to violence and bloodlust. And ultimately died a loser. He never won. He wasn't like Kotaro, where Kotaro eventually got his first win when it really counted. No! Toda never really won anything significant in his life. He lost everything. He lost, in the gene game, from the start he was already at a disadvantage. Then he lost his sight. Then he lost his grandson. And then lost this match, lost his fight. It's very unfortunate. He's a very tragic character. You can't help but feel really bad for the guy. But, even as Fuma points out, this dude's awesome. You're the best man I've seen yet, Toda Seigen. So, cheers to Toda. You were fucking awesome. But we're very happy that the muscle goddess Fuma has lived to fight another day. So what did you guys think of this fight? I imagine you liked it quite a bit. Yeah, so now I'm pretty much caught up in terms of videos. So whenever Chapter 13 gets translated sometime, I'm thinking in the next few days. I'm pretty sure it should be out in the next few days, looking at when the chapters are usually uploaded. We'll be all caught up. There won't be any continuity issues. Anyone who's new to the series can catch up with my thoughts on all the previous stuff from chapters 1 through 12. And I think that's pretty nice. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. Once again, I'm planning on doing Tenkaichi reactions whenever we get a new chapter. And if you enjoy discussing Tenkaichi with other people, you can talk about it on my Discord. I have that link down in the description. We also have a channel for Fuma art, so, you can check that out if you're interested. And since it's the end of the video, I might as well give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Archbear CJ2K, Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, K-God, Chris Redfield, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, Chuck Speed and Seed, Jake Sterizi, Play Free Labs, Kanichi Kaneda, and Strawbones. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, or access to reviews for One Piece and The Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.